You know, if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I'd ever end up in a war with my HOA, I probably would have laughed out loud and changed the subject. Swear to God, I used to be the most rule-following guy on the block. My lawn was always neat, the paint fresh, the mailbox straight, and I actually read the whole stack of community guidelines the day we moved in 3 years ago now. I guess what nobody tells you is that sometimes even the people who play by the rules, we're the ones who get pushed too far. My neighborhood, it's not the kind with gold-plated mailboxes or Tesla charging stations, but it's nice enough that folks walk around like they're minor royalty. People retire here thinking they've made it, and young families break their backs to get a foot in the door because of the school district. Most folks are decent, just trying to hang on to their little patch of happiness. The problem was the HOA board didn't see it that way. The board honestly felt like it was run by cartoon villains. The president, let's call her Brenda, she'd never worked a day where she had to say, "Have a nice day," and mean it. Her idea of leadership was barking orders and writing fines. Her vice president, Dave, he was her lapdog middle management somewhere, the kind of guy who thinks running an HOA is like being king. These two had been steering the ship for about 4 years, and man, in that time they turned life into a minefield for anyone who so much as questioned their vision. You left your trash can out an hour past pickup, fine. Got clover in your grass, fine. Your kid drew a smiley face on the sidewalk with chalk. Apparently that's a violation against the community's aesthetic standards. But the thing that yanked me right into the thick of it, it started when they got this wild hair to standardize landscaping, supposedly to bump up property values. They hired a landscaping company. Now here's where you want to pay attention. This company wasn't just any company. It was owned by Dave's nephew. Not his son, but nephew, like that made it all squeaky clean. They had 3 employees, a rickety pickup, and tools that looked like they'd come from a pawn shop. When they pitched the contract at the community meeting, I did my homework. I found out this nephew's company didn't even have the right license for the stuff they wanted to do. They could cut grass, sure, but drainage work, tree removal, messing with foundations, not a chance. I brought my findings highlighted, annotated to the meeting, and I said we should get 3 real bids from licensed contractors before we sign anything. Well, Brenda lit into me like I'd just suggested we torch the playground. She called me obstructionist, said I was holding back progress. Dave accused me of having some personal agenda. All I wanted was proper licensing and insurance, you know? Seemed pretty basic. They rammed the vote through anyway. Most people, they just wanted to get home and eat dinner, so they voted yes. The nephew's crew rolled in the next week, and I'll admit at first I was a little smug. They immediately trashed the irrigation at the entrance, planted bushes that couldn't survive a Texas summer, laid down the wrong mulch, killed half the flowers. The board just shrugged, said it was a transition phase. I figured as long as they stayed away from my yard, I could watch the show from a safe distance. That was my mistake. 3 months in, I had to leave town for my wife's sister's wedding, gone for a long weekend. Before we left, my backyard was pristine, $15,000 spent on drainage because my lot sits at the bottom of a slope. French drains, perfect grading rock channels, and right in the center a Japanese maple I'd saved up for cost me $3,000 worth every penny. My wife adored that tree, took photos every fall when the leaves turned red. We came back Monday, and the first thing I see is the backyard gate swinging open. That gate never gets left open, not by us. I walk back there and my heart just drops. My backyard, it's a war zone. Deep ruts from heavy tires, mud everywhere. My entire drainage system torn out and piled by the fence like junk. That maple, my wife's favorite thing in the world, lying on its side, roots naked to the sun, leaves already curling. I stood there silent, just numb. My wife saw, and I'll never forget, she started crying right there in the yard. I spent 2 hours taking pictures from every angle, measuring, documenting, trying to stay logical, even though inside I was boiling. First thing next morning, I call the HOA management company. The woman on the phone sounds baffled, says she's never heard of private property work being authorized. But when I mention Brenda's name, suddenly, she's passing on my concerns and I never hear back. Next day, I walk down to Brenda's place. She opens the door with this tight little smile like she's been waiting for this. I explain what I came home to, and she cuts me off. Says the landscaping contractor flagged non-compliant drainage that was affecting community water flow. According to her, my whole system was unpermitted, a menace to the neighborhood. I ask who gave permission to rip up my yard while I was gone. She says the board acted under emergency provisions, claimed they tried to contact me and just couldn't wait. That's a lie. I checked my phone, email, everything. No calls, no texts. I point this out. She shrugs. Then she says the maple was non-native and had to be removed for compliance. 3 years it had been there, no one said a word. Suddenly it's an outlaw. I ask about compensation for the damage, 15 grand plus my tree. She stares me dead in the eye and says, well, it's your word against ours about what was here before. She actually tells me their contractor said my yard was an eyesore and hazard. Unless I can prove otherwise, I have no recourse. And then, like she's handing out candy, she fines me $500 for illegal landscaping modifications. At that point, I'm shaking. I tell her I'll be contacting a lawyer. She just grins and says their legal budget is bigger than mine and homeowners who fight usually regret it. Walking home, I realize she's probably right. We could afford a lawyer, but not a marathon legal fight. But then something clicked in me. If they wanted to play games with paperwork, fine, I'd become the king of paperwork. I requested every document, bylaws, amendments, rules. They had 10 days to hand it all over. While I waited, I dove into HOA law. Turns out boards have to avoid conflicts of interest. Funny thing, hiring your own nephew. Also for emergency work on private property. There's got to be notice certified mail, 48 hours if possible, full board approval, and the work has to be done by licensed contractors from an approved list. Guess what? I'd never even seen an approved vendor list. When the docs finally arrived, I combed through them all weekend. There it was. Section 12, emergency repairs. Clear as day, imminent danger, only certified mail licensed and insured vendors, updated list every year. I asked for the vendor list, management says it's under review. So I pull public records on the landscaping company barebones license. No insurance for drainage or tree removal, history of lawsuits. I submit a formal records request for all board emails and meeting minutes about the landscaping contract. Legally, they have to give them up. 2 weeks later, I get the emails. Meeting minutes are full of holes like someone took a black marker to the timeline, but the email's jackpot. There's Dave sending his nephew a list of problem properties, mine right at the top with a note. Start here. Let's see if he likes his fancy garden after we're done. Nephew replies, worried about liability. Dave assures him the board has full authority. Brenda emails the morning we left town telling the nephew it's perfect timing to deal with my yard. At this point, it's obvious this wasn't an emergency. It was revenge for speaking up. And that, my friend, is when I knew exactly what to do. I learned that board members can be held personally liable when they step out of line, especially if they act for personal reasons or use unqualified contractors. Their insurance won't cover it. So I send a formal letter asking for mediation. I say I want to settle things peacefully. We meet at the clubhouse, Brenda, Dave, the nephew. I start the meeting with a little announcement. I'll be recording this for my records. For 20 minutes, I let them spin. Their story, neighbors complained, couldn't reach me. Emergency repairs, all that. I nod, take notes, let them dig their own hole. Then I lay out my evidence, photos, receipts, permits, emails, the works. I read out Dave's fancy garden email, Brenda's perfect timing note. The room goes silent. The nephew leaves. Dave tries to bluster, but Brenda shuts him up. I spell it out by acting out of spite, using an unlicensed contractor. They're personally liable. And then I give my terms $18,000 for damages, their immediate resignations, the nephew's contract canceled, and a real contractor hired to fix the mess. 7 days to comply, or I file suit and report the company. Brenda tries to save face, but she knows I've got them cold. 4 days later, I get a call. The board caves. Check for 18 grand. Both Brenda and Dave resign the nephew's band from the neighborhood. The new board, led by a retired engineer who actually knows what he's doing, brings in real pros. My backyard is put back together even better than before. My wife got to plant a new Japanese maple. It cost more than the old one, but the settlement covered it. The cherry on top. 6 months later, Brenda had to sell her house to pay for legal fees. Now you might think this is all about revenge or money, but that's not it. The real win was watching the neighborhood breathe easier. The new board focuses on the stuff that matters: property values, parks, actual community. And me, I learned something I wish I'd known earlier. If you ever find yourself up against bureaucratic bullies, don't fight them with rage, fight them with receipts. Be patient, be thorough. Their own paperwork will hang them. Moral of the story: never delete an email. Read the boring rules. They might be your only weapon when the folks in charge forget who they're supposed to serve. So let me ask you, have you ever gone toe-to-toe with an HOA, a boss, or anyone in power who thought the rules didn't apply to them? Where's the line between keeping the peace and standing up for yourself? I'd love to hear what you'd do. Maybe you've got a story even crazier than mine. Drop your thoughts or your own HOA nightmares down below. Who knows? Maybe your story's the one someone else needs to hear just to know they're not alone in the fight.